Hello there, and welcome to another episode of the Growth Diaries Series 3. And look who's just walked into the door, Dr. Dhru Shah. Hello, sir. How are you?
Oh, good to see you again. Been a while.
It has been a very, very long time, actually. It's been 2 series too long.
Oh, 2 series too long. Yeah.
And we've changed so many things in these last couple of series. Something's happened. Something's changed. Something has morphed. What's this?
My T-shirt.
What's happened?
It's cold out there today. It's just cold out there. But, you know, so I put a jumper on.
Okay.
But I think change is always good, right?
Change is coming. I mean, we are switching now from summer mode to autumn, as Americans call it, the fall. We're three or 4 days away from changing our seasons. So what's changed now with us guys?
Well, lots have changed. I think let's talk about change. You know, change is the only constant. A lot of people are used to accepting something being the way it is. But the whole point is that things are going to change, always. But now we live in a world where that change is really, really rapid. I feel things are more unpredictable, things are more divided, things are much, much more louder. We're just seeing so much information coming our way. It feels like it's carnage out there. Don't you think so?
Absolutely. I mean, when you talk about change, it could be technology change, it could be political change.
Yeah.
What kind of change and morph are you talking about?
Everything. Ultimately, whatever ecosystem we live in is being affected by all these changes, right? I mean, a small technology change can have a ripple effect across, and everyone's trying to look for predictability. You know, you're thinking, I'll make a plan, I'll make a 3-year plan, and I'll do something, and then this change happens somewhere, and it impacts your plan, right? Or something unpredictable happens, and it impacts your plan, and someone goes, oh, it's just a storm, it'll pass, right? It's just a storm. Actually, it's the permanent climate. Change and unpredictability are now the permanent climate. And I feel we have to learn to thrive through that. We have to learn to thrive to this uncertainty.
Well, I was a devout Boy Scout back in the day, and Baden-Powell always says, be prepared. So you've got to be prepared for change. But how do you prepare for that change, Dhru?
You know, how you prepare for that change is think and operate completely differently. And there are 2 things that come to mind. You have to learn constantly and differently. Learning has to become a necessity, not an optional thing. And you have to grow differently. Learning and growth need a different trajectory, a different way of doing things. And that's what we'd look at. Now, you know, so many people think, isn't learning growth? It's not, they're different.
So learning is different to growth.
Learning is different to growth.
But when you learn, you grow.
When you learn, you learn.
And
You
when
don't
grow,
always grow. No, when you learn, you won't always grow.
Explain that.
Right, let's look at learning. What is learning?
Learning is something you're doing for the first time that you've never done before, and then you'll know how to do it again in the future.
In a way, yes, you are. But learning is information, right? So when you're learning something, first time you're taking in some information, most of the time, or early times, you're actually taking in new information. And in your brain, you're synthesizing it, you're connecting it, and you're creating something in your mind. You're understanding it. That's learning, right? But then that's knowledge. So you take your learning, you input the information, you process it, you synthesize it, you connect it to stuff you know, and suddenly it makes sense. Now that is knowledge. That's fine, but that's learning. I can give you knowledge all day long. If you do nothing about it, you do nothing about it.
Yeah.
But then you go out there and you go, I'm going to apply this knowledge to something practically useful for me or a problem I'm solving. So what happens is you go and put this knowledge out there, and you, when you put it, you apply it. You now experience things and you get information and feedback from that. You learn the nuances of where you're putting it on. Through that experience of applying this knowledge, you suddenly can do something you couldn't do before. And you become a certain person. That's growth. So you could learn all day, but if you don't apply it, you don't make mistakes, you don't grow past it, growth never happens. So that's the sort of difference you're looking at. You know, learning and growth, they're very close. They happen side by side, but they're 2 different things. Look at a master chef, right? Look at, you know, I suppose a chef who learns how to make a recipe. That's learning is, tell me the ingredients, tell me how I mix the ingredients, tell me what I should do. Yeah. Now this person who's learned this recipe goes, I'm going to try and make it. As they try and make it, they go, hold on, the heat on this cooker is a bit high. Oh, instead of 5, I should do 4 minutes, right? And they suddenly go, oh, they told me to put X amount of onions when making this curry, but I only have half. What should I do? You start whereas you start applying your learning, but you start understanding the nuances. You start experiencing and feeling what it is, right? And ultimately, growth is when you become the master chef.
Right.
It's a big difference.
But that's not where it ends, though, right? I mean, it's lifelong learning.
It's lifelong learning. But this is what I'm saying. When the world is changing and unpredictable, you have to keep learning. No doubt about that. Things are changing around you. New things are coming. Your own situation is changing. Your own context is changing. So the more information you take in, the more prepared you get for everything else. You're prepared, right? But there's a second factor. It's not just learning. It's how you learn. See, we were all taught, learn as much information as you can, learn it when you can, right? Ad hoc,
absorb it all,
and take it in and get to, finish the book, get to the end kind of thing. And ultimately you do it. And how many times have you done all this learning and you've forgotten it? You think, what's the point? That's not the kind of learning we need in this new, unpredictable, changing world. In that new climate, you want a different type of learning. It's got to be targeted. It's got to be focused and intentional. You've got to know where you're going. So you've got to have a real good way of figuring out where your information gap is, where the problem is. And then once you know that target, you've got to know and find out where you go to get that information that you need in a way that's going to impact and absorb you. Because we lead a fast life, right? We lead a very fast life. And what happens is, sometimes you start to think, I'll do it when I can. Or you're trying to do it, I've got to do this quickly, I haven't got time. If you don't optimize your learning, you're going to get distracted. There's enough distractions out there. And there are strategies where in this deadline, you live in a world of deadline and pressure. And in that, you have to spend time and go, I've got to sit down and take in this information effectively, deeply, enough that I can internalize it. And then you've got to find a way to evaluate it so it really gets embedded, so you don't forget it and you can apply it. Now, that's a whole different learning process. One of them is called RACE, the other one's called DOPE kind of learning, right? And DOPE learning is the type of learning where you diagnose, you optimize, you perform, and you evaluate. And that's what you've got to do in this modern world. And filling that information gaps is one of the most powerful things you can do. It's a superpower. And that's one end. But learning is how you do things. But what's the point of doing or learning how to do things when you don't know what you're learning about? So learning is filling the information gap, which tells you how to do things. Growth is filling the strategic gap, which is what should I do? Because once you know what to do, then you can understand how to do it.
Gotcha.
Right? And again, that what is changing in the fast world. So it's not just information changing, the what is changing, because that strategic gap is moving. And because it's moving, you got to figure out how you morph around it and how you develop around it. In a dynamic world, your growth has to morph, dynamorph.
Dynamorph, remember that one, folks. You're going to hear a lot more about Dynamorph. And personally, for me, it's been a privilege to be near you when you've kind of, you're putting all this kind of stuff together, you're dissecting it, you're taking it apart, you're putting it together, and you think, no, that's not quite right. You're dissecting it again, putting it all back together. Where are we now? Because there's this thing called E-state, right?
Yes.
Tell everyone what you mean by E-state.
It's an empowered state. Let's call it E-state or empowered state. You're empowered because, we have been brought up to constantly chase this end goal, this success.
Pass your exams.
Pass your exams,
get your job,
or get your degree, or get your job. But in a changing, constant world, you can't have that. You can't have a goalpost every time. It's shifting.
Well,
right?
with AI, you might not even have a job.
You might not even have a job, so the goalpost shifts again. In that state, you've got to remain empowered, right? So your beacon is no longer the goal. Your beacon is your principle. Or your beacon is the enduring thing that you stand for. So no matter where your goal shifts, no matter where the situation changes, you kind of go, okay, I can change my goal because I still stand for this,
Right.
right? Your cause, as Simon Sinek calls it, or whatever that is. That's your new thing, your empowered state. And it's made of 5 big, powerful things. One is endurance. And when I say endurance, what I'm saying is that you are so focused on working to this one thing that really kind of excites you, and the one thing that's important and critical to you, and the one thing that will contribute to the world, that you can withstand all the other stuff. You can kind of go, well, that's not completed, I'll deal with it. I'll piss this person off, I'll deal with it. You kind of almost build a resilience because you recognize this core thing is the most important, and you focus all your energies on that. And that's the first endurance, E. The second then becomes, because you focus on that, you get engaged. You kind of get really into it. And as you get into it, and engaged is your E, second part of the E state. But as you get engaged, you get to understand it more. You begin to realize, this is the whole ecosystem. I can see a changing world can affect this bit or this bit, this. And you go, I'm now clearer and I know what next step to get. And that's your third E, the enlightened aspect. And you're enlightened about where the problems can be, what action you can take, the next action. And as you take the next action, you create an effect. Effect on you and an effect on somebody else.
And that's the fourth.
That's your fourth E.
Right.
But it's a changing world. So you don't stop there. You evolve. And that's your fifth E. And as you get into this cycle, it's no longer something you're doing for today. It's your condition, who you become. It's your constant state.
So let me just stop
you there. That's an
there.
empowered state.
It is, but you can't. Do you have to go through those 5 E's? You can't skip an E.
You can't really skip an E, because if you don't understand your ecosystem, you can't make an effect. You can't get enlightened unless you're engaged. Because if you're not engaged about something, then you're not going to be curious enough to understand it better. You're not going to dig deep to understand it to a level where you get enlightened, right? If you're not enduring something, you're constantly distracted in responding to people, right? Then you can't go deep into engagement. So at some level, it's building, and it's building. And the more you build, the more empowered you become. And I suppose I call it empowered state because you're shifting the influence of power from an outside world into your internal world. You're saying, no matter what happens out there, I will remain empowered. I will keep the fire burning inside me. And I suppose that's where it comes from.
So once you've got to the last E, is that the end?
It's called evolve, so it never ends.
It never ends. It's infinity.
Infinite, and that's what you got to realize. And in a changing world, that's why it's infinite. And that's why I said, when you looked at school and traditional success, a goal, graduation, a goal, all of those were finite. But in a changing world, when things are shifting, you can't have a finite endpoint. You can't have a plan. You have to work more from a different position, a different beacon that's going to hold you steady when the winds are blowing around you, right? You need a different kind of anchor.
So talking about your analogy, your MasterChef analogy, where does the E state come into that? Which E is that?
It's the whole thing, the empowered state.
From beginning
to
end.
So the MasterChef is the guy who endures everything else, knowing that what I stand for is an amazing experience for the people who come in, right? I'm not going to be good at just one recipe. It's the amazing experience. So they get engaged into understanding what's an amazing experience. How do you understand the customer's needs? How do you understand their goals? How do you understand their taste buds? How do you understand their preferences? How do you understand the environment they create, right? All of that. And when you realize that, you go, okay, let me do the next step. Just the next step around that. What's the current biggest challenge? And you deal with that. And then when you put it in place, you find that you're creating some impact on the customer and yourself, because it's going to make you feel good, right? And when you're in that position, you say, let me see what comes out of it. So you evolve, and the MasterChef then evolves more and evolves more. And that's where the MasterChef happens, because it's gone through this. And here's the thing. We were talking about learning and growth. E state, the growth leads you to an E state. But the learning is very different. Instead of just learning one domain area, the MasterChef now needs a wide range of learning. It's got to learn the recipes and all experience that. It's got to learn how customer experience happens. He's got to learn how to really put things together so that he understands how customer experience, environment, culinary dishes, everything works together.
And if he's a business owner, he's got to make
It's
the
gonna
numbers work.
numbers work and business, right? So actually, a master chef and learning in this modern changing world, using that master chef analogy, means you have a wider range of learning, you synthesize all that together, you connect it together, and that's how you then develop dynamic growth in a modern changing world. And Will Guidara, who's written the book Unlimited Hospitality, talks about that. It's a different kind of growth. And I mean, he talks about unlimited hospitality and how he grew his restaurant business. But it was a different kind of growth he took, a different kind of learning he took. And we've all got to find that. Because if you sit still, chances are you'll fall behind. You might become very irrelevant. And any industry that does that is pretty much doomed for failure, sooner or later.
Well, we've known each other for very many number of years now, in fact since 2008, 2009, and I have seen you as a person and your business not just grow but evolve. So in all these years now, talking about the 5 E states, which state are you in, do you think?
I'm in the E state somewhere. It's not the 5 E's, it's the combination of the 5 E's that creates the E state. And then your intensity or your depth of that E state gets more and more. And the way I tell people is that perhaps it goes from what's a fleeting interest, and you kind of get curious and you engage in this interest and it takes you into a passion, and then that passion becomes so much that it drives you into a purpose, so you go deeper. Those 5 things just get more and more. Okay. You can endure more, you can get engaged more, you can actually get enlightened a lot more, you can then create an effect and an impact that's a lot more, and you evolve a lot more because you have more, your evolution steps become bigger rather than smaller. And that's the empowered. So the empowered state is the key, but it's different levels of it based on how the other E's are performing along that. And those who are not in an E state are in the fade state. They're firefighting all day long because they're handling a million things. They're either, fades is FADS, firefighting is the first bit. A stands for apathy or aimlessness. Either they don't care or they don't know which way to go. Rather than getting engaged, they're doing things superficially. And then the D stands for disorientation. So rather than being enlightened, they're completely disoriented because they kind of have a plan, but it keeps getting damaged along, right? And then the E stands for effectlessness. So instead of being effective, they're effectlessness.
Yeah.
And the S stands for stagnation. They can't evolve, which is what you should be having. They stagnate. And if they end up in a fade state, you can't sit there and go, I'm in a fade state. You'll never know. What you will see is the signs and symptoms of it. People who are overwhelmed, people who feel like they don't know which way to go, people who go, oh, my job's meaningless, people who are reacting to everything. These are examples. People who kind of go, well, which way do I go? I'm confused. Which course do I go on? All of these, there are 21 signs and symptoms of the fade state. And I've built a questionnaire that actually brings these signs and symptoms out and tells you where you can be on the fade state.
This is absolutely exciting stuff. It's powerful, to say the least.
It's deep.
It's very deep. And I'm just wondering, your background as a healthcare professional, this is not what you were born to do, was it, in terms of healthcare? You were born to do lots of other things as well. So how did you actually make that evolution to go from healthcare into this? Because this is just amazing.
It's a long story, and many people have heard the long story, but in essence, I was always about education, and we built Tubules, right, as this massive education portal for dentistry. But some people really engaged in deep dental learning, and some people couldn't be bothered. It's too expensive. And so I thought something's missing here. How come some people are really engaged in learning and growth, and some people are not? And that journey made me go into this exploration process, right? I endured everything else, got engaged into this and started getting enlightened. And now I'm trying to affect things. But what I realized is that a lot of dentists do things because it's interesting. They're not a deep level. There's not a passion for many people. It's a means to an end. But from that, they were getting phased. There were dentists who were stuck. They were overwhelmed. There were dentists who were really struggling, who didn't, they'd lost interest in dentistry. It was a means to an end. Others were interested, but didn't really do it deeper than that. But there was a group who truly were inspired by dentistry enough that they wanted to master their craft and be good, powerful dentists for nothing else but being good at it. And that helped the patient. And just doing that eventually gave them financial rewards. So they were more on the estate side of things.
Yeah.
And that kind of took me on the journey. I've done all the reading and the research. I thought, what powers people's growth? What enables them to become, people who are different kind of learners in this modern changing world? So that was one side, the dentistry side. The other thing I noticed, and Adam Grant's book, Think Again, made me realize, is that we're in this rapidly changing world, right? Where things are never stable. And if you don't grow, if you don't learn, you're going to get really, really lost. You will struggle, you'll become irrelevant. And you have to have the right type of learning and the right type of growth to enable you to be empowered in this modern, changing, unpredictable world.
I hope you're taking all this in, ladies and gents, and I hope you're making notes, because I tell you what, unless you press pause and rewind, you're not going to remember any of this. But, it's always a pleasure sitting next to you, Dhru, and listening to all of this. So what's next for you now?
I'm writing the book and all of this. I'm writing the book, and I tell you what, when you explore all this, it's building the methodologies, right? We've built these questionnaires that tell you where you are in terms of your different types of learning. It tells you about the E-state and the Fed state, and where you are, gives you a score. That was the first thing we did, the questionnaire. We've built the introductory sort of talks on this for people to understand things better. And now I'm writing a book about it, and I'm doing that. And in that book, we will expand more on the learning methodologies as well as the growth methodologies, what we call the morph growth and the dope learning, because that helps you learn and grow in a certain way in this modern changing world. But it's interesting because you talked about it, we dissect things, you think you've got it, and then you realize, oh no, that's not right. So you unpack the whole thing, you throw it away and you start again. And sometimes you're looking for the depth of answers and thinking, how do I crack this code? How do I crack this? And when you make the breakthrough, you feel exhilarated. Sometimes when you're thinking that hard, my head hurts.
Yeah.
But this is part of it. Empowered state is where you care so much about something, you will not settle for anything less than excellence. It's not the end point, it's not the result that you're after. It's making sure that what you're doing is the best that it can be. And you read around it, you learn around it, you try and get as much as you can to make that process so foolproof that it's not foolproof, but so masterful that it can affect and help many, many people. And the results just come as a wayside of it.
Look, knowing you as much as I do,
Yeah.
and I know that you can speak to anybody, whatever
Right.
walks of life. You've heard of an elevator pitch, right?
Yeah.
We're now on the ground floor. I say
Yeah.
we, you, and you've pressed the button, and there's somebody in the lift.
Yeah.
And you go in, and you think, and he says, "I've come down again. I want to go back up." And you say, "That's fine. I'll come back up with you because your car's parked on the 35th floor."
Yeah.
And doors close, and the guy or the girl opens up to you and says, "Do you know what? I just don't know where I am in life. What do you think?" Because if you know Dhru the way I do, people just approach him. They don't even know him. They'll just start opening up. So this
Yeah,
person's
that's
opened
true.
up to you now, right?
Yeah.
He or she is a business person, and they're kind of down in the dumps.
Yeah.
You've got 45 seconds to talk to them. What do
Yeah.
you say?
I would tell them, look, you sound like you're stuck. You want to make a breakthrough. You feel like you don't know where you're in life. Where do you want to go? And the first question I always tell people is, where do you want to go? What do you want to achieve? What direction do you feel is going to make you happy? And he has 35 seconds, or did you say 35 floors? Or she has 35 floors to tell me where they want to go. What do they see as the thing that will make them make the breakthrough? Because once we know where they want to go, once I know what their blueprint is, what their vision is, then we can map the journey for them. And in mapping that journey, you'll figure out what winds of change came and blew them down. We'll figure out what threw them from what was probably an ease state to fade state. You'll probably figure out that have they been learning? Have they been growing? Or have they been unlearning and ungrowing? You'll figure out if there are certain points where they're stuck. And ultimately, I will try and do my best to help them make that breakthrough. Now, that's pretty much what I would look at. So if they didn't want to answer it, I'll say, look, you tell me, because if I can help you, I will give you ideas, I will give you questions, and I will give you things to think about that may just help you make that breakthrough.
And I bet, you know what they're going to do when they get to the 35th floor? Press ground again, because they want another 45 seconds with you.
Listen, hey, my time's limited these days as well. And you know, this is the other interesting part. I love helping people make breakthroughs.
Yeah.
I love helping people grow, as you've seen. But one of the biggest things I realized is that anything we do, any action we take, is meeting two needs and two goals. Our need and our goal, and the person we are serving, their need and their goals. And we have to be very balanced, because sometimes some people take an action to serve their need or goals, but cause damage to the other person who they're meant to be serving.
Yeah.
Now, we know what we think of those selfish idiots, and we can, I wouldn't rant on that. But then there are others whose actions spend all the time serving the other person's needs and goals, sacrificing their own. And I've done that for a long time. And one thing I realized is your fuel can run low. And you have to take an action that fuels both you and the people you serve together. Very difficult to do. And I think that's the key to remember. So if we were going to go back down to the ground floor, I'd have to think how much fuel's left in my system as well. And perhaps that's part of my evolution. I'm learning to know where to draw the line, because I hit burnout at some point where I could not think straight. And I don't think I'm very used to anybody if I do that.
No, true.
Yeah.
And just before we wrap up the show, in terms of the person who you'd like to speak to, right? Is there a certain age? Will they be kind of fresh out of university, or will they be right in the middle of their career, or right towards the end of their career? Who would benefit from this?
Everyone. I think everyone would benefit. But most times we find people are stuck having done a few years of work or profession or something along those lines. So people who've done a few years in, and they kind of did this education, they went to university, they did college, maybe they did an apprenticeship, and they built this real skill, and they came out on the other side going, the world's my oyster. They went into the profession, and a few years on, they are disenchanted, and they're just completely disengaged, and I wish I could do something else. Now, the thing is, after a few years of their profession or their work, I think this is not what it was meant to be, and now they look for a breakthrough. And so those people would really benefit. But what I'm now realizing is people who've been through university, graduated, and can't find a job because the world has changed. This promise that was given, that you will learn for the first 24 years of your life, then you'll get this degree, and then you will earn for the next 24 years of your life, right? That's dead. And they're disenchanted. In fact, they feel angry with the system. A system that promised them victory is not the system there anymore. And they would, benefit from this kind of thinking, because learning and growth, I repeat again, are no longer a nice to have. They are a necessity. Now, I remember actually speaking to a colleague who's a consultant, and we were at Legoland with the kids, and we were in the queue, and I was telling him all this stuff, and he said, Dhru, it's amazing that you have all this enthusiasm at this age. He goes, I'm done with learning. I'm done with it. And I said, what do you mean you're done with learning? You cannot stop the process of taking in information. The world is changing. If you get done with learning, there's a good chance you'll hit a brick wall. That's the first thing. The second thing is, if you don't learn and grow, your value doesn't grow. People catch up with you. So whichever way you look at it, it becomes important. That's the long answer. The short answer, people who are in mid-career and suddenly feel like they're stuck, and now people who are actually been given the promise of learning and are finding that all that education and degree and they're still stuck, need to make breakthroughs. They need to find their estate.
Do you know what? Thinking about this, a couple of days ago, you and I were talking, and Dhru said to me, when you're, at 8 years old or 9 years old, you ask hundreds of questions a day. And then when you're 18, you ask 5 a day. And that doesn't sound right, does it? It should be 50-50. Or more towards the end of your age, you should be asking lots of questions.
It's insane that I wish I could remember. I think it's when you enter a school, a young child basically asks about 432 questions a day. I mean, you've had kids, I've had kids, and you know why, that why stage, right? And they do that, and then they come out on the other side after a whole time of education, and if they ask 5 questions a day, where did we kill the curiosity?
Yeah.
Now, some of the theories are that
cat,
apparently killed the cat, but this just killed someone's enthusiasm. And one of the things they say is that a young child doesn't know so much of the world. So they're constantly, because they want information to understand things.
Yeah.
As they go through the education system, maybe they understand so much that at the other side they go, I don't want to ask so much. But that's not true because there's so much information there. But the other side is the education system says you've got to learn this to pass your exams. So they only ask the questions needed to pass the exams. Right. They no longer want to understand things.
The peripheral.
Peripheral's gone. The education system was created for the industrial age 100 years ago, which is why you learn first and then you earn second, because it was a constant, stable world. Yeah. If you learn first and do the skills, it'll help you the rest of your life.
Right.
Now, if you kill someone's ability to ask questions, they're not going to learn. And the questions create curiosity. Again, there's an art to making questions. Your questions have to be targeted, focused, intentional, so you know what you're learning. That superpowers your learning. But how can we kill that ability in people? We shouldn't be doing that, because curiosity is probably the spark that ignites someone's journey into lifelong learning. Look at, I don't know, UK dentistry, right? Compliance CPD. People sit there and go, here's a list of tick boxes you have to do. People don't learn anymore. They go, where do I need to find it? The cheapest, the fastest, the craziest way to do it.
I need my hours.
I need my hours, tick my box. And then that makes them rigid. It doesn't make them agile, right? And if any company then says we make you agile even in the name, that's not integral. That's a lie, right? Learning and growth are important if you want to become agile, flexible, and relevant in a rapidly changing world.
Well, there you have it. Absolutely amazing to speak to you, Dhru. Thank you so much. So this is our 3rd series. We're now going to be going on to our 4th series, and I very much look forward to chatting with you again, Dhru. From me, from the team, thank you very much.
It's always a pleasure. Keep learning, keep growing. If you want to learn more about this, we can always share more bits of knowledge. But just remember, the rapid changing world is not a storm. It's now the permanent climate.
There you go. Make sure you've got your brollies. We'll see you soon.